Have you ever wondered where the water in rivers and lakes comes from? How does it get there? The answer lies in the water cycle. In this video, we will explore the water cycle and how it transforms water from rain to rivers. A beautiful aerial view of a river flowing through a lush green landscape. The water cycle is a continuous process that moves water from the Earth's surface to the atmosphere and back again. It is driven by the sun's energy and the Earth's gravity. A graphic of the water cycle showing the different stages. The water cycle has four main stages: evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and collection. Let's take a closer look at each of these stages. A close-up of a water droplet on a leaf, with the sun shining in the background. The first stage of the water cycle is evaporation. This is when the sun's energy heats up water on the Earth's surface, causing it to turn into water vapor and rise into the atmosphere. A time-lapse of water evaporating from a puddle on a hot day. The water vapor then cools and condenses into clouds in the atmosphere. A time-lapse of clouds forming in the sky. The second stage of the water cycle is condensation. This is when the water vapor in the atmosphere turns back into liquid water. A close-up of water droplets forming on a window. The third stage of the water cycle is precipitation. This is when the water droplets in the clouds become too heavy and fall back to the Earth's surface as rain, snow, sleet, or hail. A time-lapse of rain falling on a city street. The fourth and final stage of the water cycle is collection. This is when the water that falls to the Earth's surface collects in rivers, lakes, and oceans. A time-lapse of a river flowing through a valley. In the next segments, we will explore each of these stages in more detail and see how they are all connected in a water cycle. In this segment, we will explore the first stage of the water cycle, evaporation. A time-lapse of a lake on a sunny day, with steam rising from the surface. Evaporation is the process by which water on the Earth's surface turns into water vapor and rises into the atmosphere. This process is driven by the sun's energy. A close-up of a water droplet on a leaf, with the sun shining in the background. When the sun's energy heats up water on the Earth's surface, it causes the water molecules to move faster and faster. Eventually, some of these water molecules gain enough energy to break free from the surface and turn into water vapor. A time-lapse of water evaporating from a puddle on a hot day. This water vapor then rises into the atmosphere, where it cools and condenses into clouds. A time-lapse of clouds forming in the sky. Evaporation occurs not only from bodies of water like lakes and oceans, but also from plants and soil. This process is called transpiration. A time-lapse of plants swaying in the wind, with steam rising from the leaves. Transpiration is the process by which plants release water vapor into the atmosphere through tiny pores in their leaves. A close-up of a leaf with tiny pores. In fact, transpiration is responsible for about 10% of the water vapor in the atmosphere. A graphic showing the percentage of water vapor in the atmosphere from different sources. Evaporation is a crucial part of the water cycle, as it is the first step in moving water from the Earth's surface to the atmosphere. A graphic of the water cycle, with the evaporation stage highlighted. In the next segment, we will explore the second stage of the water cycle, condensation. In a previous segment, we explored the first stage of the water cycle, evaporation. In this segment, we will take a closer look at the second stage of the water cycle, condensation. A time-lapse of clouds forming in the sky. Condensation is the process by which water vapor in the atmosphere turns back into liquid water. This process occurs when the water vapor cools and the water molecules slow down. A close-up of water droplets forming on a window. When the water molecules slow down enough, they begin to stick together and form tiny droplets of liquid water. A time-lapse of water droplets forming on a leaf. These droplets then combine with other droplets to form clouds. A time-lapse of clouds moving across the sky. Clouds are made up of millions of tiny water droplets or ice crystals that are suspended in the atmosphere. A close-up of a cloud, with the sun shining behind it. The type of cloud that forms depends on the temperature and humidity of the air. A graphic showing the different types of clouds and their characteristics. As the water droplets in the clouds grow larger and heavier, they eventually fall back to the Earth's surface as precipitation. A time-lapse of rain falling on a city street. Condensation is a crucial part of the water cycle, as it is a process that transforms water vapor in the atmosphere back into liquid water. A graphic of the water cycle, with the condensation stage highlighted. In the next segment, we will explore the third stage of the water cycle, precipitation. In a previous segment, we explored the second stage of the water cycle, condensation. In this segment, we will take a closer look at the third stage of the water cycle, precipitation. A time-lapse of dark clouds forming in the sky. Precipitation is the process by which water droplets in the clouds become too heavy and fall back to the Earth's surface as rain, snow, sleet, or hail. A time-lapse of rain falling on a city street. The type of precipitation that falls depends on the temperature of the air and the altitude at which the precipitation forms. A graphic showing the different types of precipitation and their characteristics. Precipitation is a crucial part of the water cycle, as it is the process that returns water from the atmosphere back to the Earth's surface. A graphic of the water cycle with the precipitation stage highlighted. The amount and frequency of precipitation in a particular area can have a significant impact on the local ecosystem and human activities. A time-lapse of a river overflowing its banks during a flood. Too much precipitation can lead to flooding, while too little precipitation can lead to drought. A time-lapse of a dry, cracked riverbed. In some areas, precipitation is stored in underground aquifers or in snow and ice packs, which can provide a reliable source of water even during dry periods. A time-lapse of snow melting in the spring, with a river flowing in the background. Precipitation is a complex and dynamic process that is influenced by many factors, including temperature, humidity, and air pressure. A graphic of the water cycle with all three stages highlighted. In the final segment, we will explore the fourth and final stage of the water cycle, collection. In the previous segments, we explored the first three stages of the water cycle: evaporation, condensation, and precipitation. In this final segment, we will take a closer look at the fourth and final stage of the water cycle, collection. The time-lapse of a river flowing through a valley. Collection is the process by which the water that falls to the Earth's surface as precipitation collects in rivers, lakes, and oceans. A time-lapse of a lake with mountains in the background. The water that collects in these bodies of water can then be used by plants and animals, or it can evaporate back into the atmosphere and start the water cycle all over again. A graphic of the water cycle, with all four stages highlighted. The collection of water is an important part of the water cycle, as it provides a vital source of water for plants, animals, and humans. A time-lapse of a farmer irrigating crops. Humans have developed many ways to collect and store water, including dams, reservoirs, and irrigation systems. A time-lapse of a dam being built. However, these methods can also have negative impacts on the environment, such as altering the natural flow of rivers and disrupting ecosystems. A time-lapse of a river flowing through a city. It is important to balance the need for water with the need to protect the environment and ensure that future generations have access to clean and abundant water resources. The graphic of the water cycle, with the collection stage highlighted. The water cycle is a complex and dynamic process that is essential for life on Earth. By understanding the water cycle, we can better appreciate the importance of water and the need to protect this precious resource. A time-lapse of a sunset over a lake. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the water cycle, from rain to rivers.